In 1955, an engineer sat down across from a Formula One world champion. The champion complained his car wasn't handling right. The engineer excused himself, walked to the track in his suit and tie, climbed behind the wheel, and completed the Nürburgring 3 seconds faster than the champion ever had. Then he came back, sat down, and suggested the champion simply needed more practice. That engineer would go on to build a car so advanced, so ferociously fast, that Mercedes never let it race. They were afraid it would embarrass the competition. Only 2 were ever made. This is the Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupé, built in 1955, named after the man who created it. And for nearly 70 years it was considered untouchable, literally priceless, because Mercedes swore they would never sell one. Then, in May 2022, they did. The hammer fell at €135 million. With fees, that's $143 million, making it the most expensive car ever sold at auction. But here's what makes that number almost irrelevant. There are only 2 of these cars in existence. There will only ever be 2. And the one that sold? Mercedes had kept it locked away for 67 years, shown only at the most exclusive automotive gatherings on Earth. This isn't a car that became rare through attrition. It was born rare. To understand the Uhlenhaut Coupé, you have to understand the man and the moment. Rudolf Uhlenhaut was born in London in 1906 to a German father and an English mother. He spoke both languages without accent, and by the time he reached his 40s, he'd become something unusual in the automotive world, an engineer who could outperform the professional drivers testing his own creations. He wasn't just a designer sitting behind a drafting table. He drove hard, relentlessly. His philosophy was simple: if you can't feel what the car is doing at the limit, you have no business designing one. By 1954, Uhlenhaut was head of passenger car testing and development at Mercedes-Benz, a role that also gave him command of the racing division, and Mercedes was on a mission. They had returned to motorsport after a long post-war absence, determined to reclaim their pre-war dominance. Their weapon was the W196R, the silver arrow that would carry Juan Manuel Fangio to back-to-back Formula One championships in 1954 and 1955. But Formula One wasn't the only battlefield. Parallel to the Grand Prix circuit, Mercedes developed a sports racing car for long-distance events, the 300 SLR, super light Rennsport, super light racing. In 1955, Stirling Moss drove one to victory in the Mille Miglia, averaging nearly 160 kilometers per hour across 1,000 miles of public Italian roads. It remains the fastest average speed ever recorded in that legendary race. Mercedes became sports car world champions, and Rudolf Uhlenhaut had an idea. The open cockpit 300 SLR was already the fastest sports racing car of its era. But Uhlenhaut understood physics. An enclosed body would reduce aerodynamic drag. Less drag meant higher top speeds, and for the grueling long-distance races on his mind, specifically the Carrera Panamericana, a 3,000-kilometer death sprint across Mexico, driver comfort wasn't a luxury, it was a survival advantage. So he built a coupe. The 300 SLR Coupé borrowed its heart from Formula One. A 3.0-litre straight-8 engine, derived directly from the Grand Prix car, with desmodromic valve actuation, a system where the valves are mechanically closed rather than relying on springs. It allowed the engine to scream to higher RPMs without the risk of valve float. The result? 302 horsepower. In 1955, that number meant something almost incomprehensible. The fastest road cars of the era were making perhaps 150 horsepower. A typical family sedan produced 60. Uhlenhaut had doubled what most people considered maximum performance. Mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox and wrapped in a body that weighed just 998 kilograms, barely 2,200 pounds, the coupe was capable of 300 kilometers per hour, 186 miles per hour. The fastest German sports cars of the day could barely crack 200 kilometers per hour, Uhlenhaut had built something that wouldn't be matched for decades. Two versions were completed, one with a red leather interior, one with blue. Enthusiasts simply call them the red and the blue. Each has subtle differences. The red car's fuel filler is rotated differently, tucked beneath the trunk lid rather than through the rear window. Details only obsessives would notice. Details that make each car unique. The Uhlenhaut Coupe was built to race. It was never going to. In late 1955, the Mexican government cancelled the Carrera Panamericana, citing the deaths that had plagued the event. And Mercedes-Benz, reeling from the catastrophic Le Mans disaster that killed over 80 spectators, made a decision that shocked the racing world. They withdrew from motorsport entirely. At the height of their dominance, with 2 world championships in hand, Mercedes walked away. The Uhlenhaut Coupe, built to be the ultimate long-distance racing weapon, had no war left to fight. But Rudolf Uhlenhaut wasn't about to let his creation gather dust. He did something that sounds like legend, except the documentation exists. He made it his company car. For years, Uhlenhaut commuted between Stuttgart and Munich, a distance of roughly 220 kilometers. According to those who knew him, he completed the journey in about an hour. That's an average speed of over 135 miles per hour on public roads. In the 1950s, radar speed enforcement wouldn't exist in Germany until 1959. Uhlenhaut simply drove. As fast as the car would allow, which was faster than anything else on the road. He also used the coupe for demonstration drives. Meticulously documented events where journalists, racing drivers, even royalty experienced what it felt like to travel in a car from the future. Records show he once took Paul O'Shea, the American racing driver, for a freeway tour. Another entry notes a drive with the Duke of Kent. One imagines His Royal Highness was quite moved. The 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe occupies a strange space in automotive history. It's a racing car that never raced, a prototype that became more famous than any production model could have been. A machine built for competition that instead became a symbol of what happens when engineering reaches beyond its era. In 1956, Switzerland's premier automotive journal took one of the coupes on a 3,500-kilometer test drive through the Alps. Their writers, hardened professionals who had driven everything, were reduced to something approaching awe. They called it a machine of bold conception and ingeniously intricate construction. They marveled at how its cornering seemed to defy the laws of physics. They concluded that this car proved modern technology could deliver both ultimate speed and genuine safety, a combination most believed impossible. When the red coupe sold in 2022, it wasn't just a transaction. It was Mercedes acknowledging that this car had transcended the brand itself. The buyer's identity was kept private. The proceeds went to a Mercedes-Benz charitable fund for educational and research scholarships. And the blue coupe, the second example, remains in the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart, locked behind glass. Occasionally awakened for events like Goodwood and Pebble Beach, where trained specialists are required just to start it. Even now, the sound of its engine shakes bystanders to the core. It's a reminder that this isn't a sculpture. It's a weapon that simply never found its war. Rudolf Uhlenhaut died in 1989. By then, the cars he built had long since become myth. But here's what lingers about the 300 SLR Coupe. It wasn't rare because time destroyed the others. It wasn't rare because collectors hoarded them. It wasn't rare by accident. It was rare by design. 2 were built because 2 were needed to test a theory, that the Open 300 SLR could be made even faster. The theory was never tested in competition, which means we'll never truly know what this car could have done against the best in the world. And maybe that's the point. Some machines are too significant to risk, too perfect to subject to the randomness of racing. They exist not as competitors, but as statements. The Uhlenhaut Coupe said something in 1955 that still echoes today. This is what's possible. if you dare to build it. This is RareHaus, where rarity defines legacy.